Hello and welcome back to Champions and Beyond. In today's video, we are going to be discussing the mystic characters of Marvel Champions. Now, with Age of Apocalypse finally releasing, we have 4 mystic characters within the game. Age of Apocalypse did bring magic into the game. Previously, we had Doctor Strange, Scarlet Witch, and Adam Warlock as our previous 3 mystics. And I thought it would be interesting to have a discussion about who really deserves the title of the Sorcerer Supreme. Now, before we get into the analysis, I'm going to give a quick disclaimer. So the thoughts and opinions that I'm about to share are my own and do not represent the thoughts and opinions of any other individual, formal body or institution, for example, Fantasy Flight Games. So the first mystic character that we received for Marvel Champions was back in Wave 1, one of the final hero packs released within that wave, and it is the hero that came with the card, the Sorcerer Supreme. It is, of course, Doctor Strange. Now, Doctor Strange is undoubtedly a very powerful character within the game. The fact that his invocation deck allows him to stun and confuse while dealing big damage or a large portion of threat control. The fact that he can then dish out up to 3 tough status cards on characters on the board. The fact that he can then turn any status card into a different status card. So tough villains can become suddenly stunned or confused, or even himself being stunned or confused can turn himself into tough. His final invocation card is his card draw card with the Winds of Watum. So he came with a very powerful side deck, and he was the first character that came with a side deck. Beyond that, really, though, his hero kit is a little bit lackluster, in my opinion. Now, we have got more spell cards, so there is maybe a little bit more play with the likes of the Sanctum Sanctorum, alter ego support, being able to shuffle in a few different options of spell cards. But generally, a lot of players will play Doctor Strange with just his invocation deck that you're really concentrating on. Now, early on as well, he did have some of the only treachery cancellation and ways to shut down the villain, which made him easily an early S-tier hero, being able to take on the toughest villains in the game. However, the fact that he is still so reliant on that invocation deck really limits the amount of deck building and the variety of deck building that you want to have when playing Doctor Strange. A lot of his decks will look very similar because at the end of the day, you want to just cycle through those invocation cards. Nothing that FFG have done to nerf cards or anything like that has really affected his ability. There is a slight argument of Cosmo's nerf being a detriment to him, but overall, he doesn't really suffer from any nerf or anything that's happened since the game started. All of this makes him quite strange to place, no pun intended, but because he can be quite dull, and that may be a popular opinion. I know he very much fits one of two ways. You either think he's very dull to play, or you absolutely love playing as Doctor Strange because of how powerful he is, how powerful it makes you feel as the hero. And both points of view are completely acceptable. For me, I think he is a very dull character to play because of the fact that just the deck building and the variety of play that you can have with him is quite limited. So, despite the fact of how powerful Doctor Strange can be, he would not be my choice for the Sorcerer Supreme. Now, because he's going first, we're going to do a little rankings as we go, and he's the only one we've spoken about so far. So, Doctor Strange is currently leading the race for the Sorcerer Supreme. But, as I say, it won't be there for long. So we didn't have to wait long after getting Doctor Strange before we got our second mystic character within the game. And that was, of course, the character that came in Cycle 2 as a hero pack, and it was Scarlet Witch. Early doors with Scarlet Witch, there was some uncertainty with how she would play and how strong she would be. The fact that a lot of her mechanics worked around discarding cards off the top of the encounter deck and slowly getting yourself closer to the acceleration tokens, which now that we have Deadpool, it seems a lot slower a way to do it than it did back then. But there was definitely some caution when playing Scarlet Witch, and without a doubt, my first half a dozen playthroughs of Scarlet Witch were very cautious, and she didn't really live up to any kind of expectation of power and fun. I think without throwing yourself into that mechanic, she did seem a little bit dull. However, once you embrace the chaos magic that she brings, she can be an immensely enjoyable character to play. Now, with her manipulation of how many boost icons you get with discarding cards off the top of the encounter deck, using her crown, using her hero ability to essentially have another go at getting something better, the fun and the unexpected nature of hex bolts and molecular decay doing a massive amount of damage. And as encounter sets have got harder and the amount of boost icons have got increased on encounter cards, she has just become more powerful as time has gone on. The fact that she had two thwarts early on to help you maintain the board state while being able to do these massive amounts of damage, while being able to cheat in really expensive cards, using her chaos magic, bringing in a Nick Fury for 4 cost or an Avengers Mansion for 4 cost, actually costing nothing and just having to discard off the top of the encounter deck, was and still is an amazingly powerful ability. Now, I really, really enjoy Scarlet Witch. Because of this, it did take a long time for me to get used to playing her, and to really embrace the nature of her playstyle. But I think that as far as our rankings are going for now, she will easily go above Doctor Strange, and she will be very difficult to knock off that top spot in our search for the Sorcerers Supreme, or the Sorceress Supreme, as it may be in this case. Now we're halfway through having a look at the Mystic characters within Marvel Champions. Please, if you like my content, give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. It does really help me out. It took 2 more cycles for us to receive our 3rd Mystic character, and he came within the big box of cycle 4, which was Mad Titan Shadow, and it was Adam Warlock, the Mystic character for the Guardians tribe. Now, Adam Warlock is a very interesting character. The fact that he deck builds with 4 separate aspects, and the fact that he can only have 1 copy of any aspect or basic card within his deck. He has got a couple of doubles of his own signature cards, but due to the fact that you are unable to add the consistency that you usually would with multiple copies of key cards, he did become very interesting to play. Now, when he first came out, there is a very popular deck out on Marvel CDB. I think the deck builder was Brian V, I want to say, and it was the Wild Tutor Adam Warlock deck. Now, I never actually played the Wild Tutor Adam Warlock deck, purely because there was so much talk about the fact that this was the only way to play him, and he was done. You know, there was no more to explore with Adam Warlock. And I saw that kind of talk as a bit of a challenge. I've always built my own decks with him. I've built a couple of different iterations of his decks, and I did play a lot of Adam Warlock at the time. I think I took him through a couple of campaigns, and I played a bunch of one-off games. The fact that you have characters like Cable that can take player side schemes from any aspect, and also Cyclops being able to take allies from any aspect, both could be traced back to Adam Warlock and the fact that you can build around all the aspects. Because of this, I do think that Adam Warlock needs a bit more respect than he sometimes gets within the community as a whole. Now, admittedly, I haven't gone back and tried him out, substituting out some aspects for the pool aspect. I think I was a lot more excited about pool, and I did play a fair bit of pool, but it's not something that drags me back to want to try over and over again. But I do think, because a lot of the pool cards you only really need 1 copy of anyway, I do think it's a very viable way to now build Adam Warlock. And in terms of our rankings, I'm maybe disrespecting him a little bit myself here as well. He's going to sit in 2nd place behind Scarlet Witch. I think pure fun factor, Witch just outshadows him slightly. I think he's still as powerful as both Strange and Scarlet Witch are. There are a few issues with his deck building, but that kind of makes him a little bit more challenging to play. That kind of makes him a little bit more entertaining for those deck builders out there that want to come up with some really funky combos that you just wouldn't ever get through any other hero. Now, we have only just received the 4th Mystic hero. We are now on wave 8, and obviously, as I said at the beginning, she came within the Age of Apocalypse big box at the start of wave 8, and that is Magic, Colossus' sister. And anybody that's watched any of my previous videos talking about Domino and her mechanics, nobody will be surprised that I am going to wax lyrical about Magic. The fact that you play with the top card of your deck face up. I see a lot of people comparing her to Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings LCG. I haven't played a bunch of that, so it's hard for me to make that comparison, but I trust the community's experience on this one to say that it is pretty much the same mechanic. But being able to manipulate the top of your deck like you can with Domino and play cards from the top of your deck after manipulating them just makes that puzzle element of her gameplay very entertaining, very enjoyable as far as I go and as far as my play style goes. It's something that I do find a real challenge to pilot well, but at the same time, you don't necessarily need to pilot her perfectly to come out with a really good experience when playing as Magic. Now, Magic is by far the least played Mystic character for me. As I say, we didn't get the box until late over here in the UK, but she has been a go-to, and she has been someone that I've played a bit of. I have enjoyed what I've played of her, but there are definitely some other builds that I've got in mind that I want to kind of really delve into. I think there'll be a very good flow like water protection build where you are using all these defense events off the top of your deck for free rather than paying out cost for them. And I think that could be a very, very interesting kind of mechanic and way of playing with Magic. So as far as our rankings go with Magic, I find it very difficult to fully place her and say definitively that this is where she will end up. But right now, with my experience of Magic and for this video, for this point in time, we are actually going to put her second in the list. So she does slot in just above Adam Warlock, just below Scarlet Witch. I do think, because I enjoy her mechanics and the mechanical side of things, I do think she has every possibility of becoming our front runner for the Sorcerer Supreme. But right now, perhaps I'm being a little bit harsh on not wanting to succumb to recency bias. Perhaps it's just the fact that I need to get the experience playing with a few different decks, trying to experiment a little bit with different ways of playing that's knocking her down at the minute. But for now, we are going to consider her as second place in the race for the Sorcerer's Supreme. So with that, I want to thank everyone for listening. If you've made it this far, then you're amazing. Thank you so much for listening to my rambles on this very niche little subject within Marvel Champions. Our Sorceress Supreme within the game currently falls to Scarlet Witch. Again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, happy gaming.